Hello, everyone. We welcome all of you to our session about use the learning sciences to empower the learner to become an agent and advocate of their own learning. And we'd love for you to introduce yourselves and to let us know why you joined our session today.
We'd also like to know maybe where you're from and what role you have in education. Are you in a school? Are you a district leader? I'd like to know who our audience is.
Let's see. Okay. Hello, Robert. Okay. Hi, Julie. Glad that you're here. Robert. Okay. Anyone else? Well, welcome, Faye. Not too sure I have seen the National Geographic education. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, Felicia. I'll have to learn more about National Geographic from your educational philanthropy. Okay, from Dallas. Hey, excited that you're here. Apex Learning. Hi, Jean. Carrie, learning specialists, technology and innovation. I just love that combination of words for sure. And Faye. So we have a really nice group here today. I'm just going to do we're going to do some quick introductions, and then we're actually going to get going so that Brock from Belgium, well, welcome. So, anyway, thank you everyone for coming. And I just want to put this out here, but we'd love for you to be able to use Twitter and tweet out to either empower the learner or make learning personal. And here's our hashtags for today's session. Okay, so hi, I'm Kathleen McCloskey. I'm co-author of 2 best-selling books on personalized learning and Make Learning Personal and How to Personalize Learning. And I'm also CEO and Chief Learning Officer of a new company called Empower the Learner that's actually going to be launched this week. So let me just say to you, I'm an early adopter of using the learning sciences and having used this in my practice now for over 20 years. I'm so excited to share with you a process using the UDL lens of access, engage, and express so they can empower every learner to be agents and advocates for their own learning. And I'm absolutely thrilled that Anjali Espinosa is joining me today, who has actually put this process into practice to empower her high school learners. So Anjali, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Kathleen and everybody else. Thanks for having me today. I am a special education teacher at Brookfield Central High School in Brookfield, Wisconsin, where I currently case manage 13 students who all have IEPs. But my day is primarily spent in the regular ed or the general ed classroom. I work this semester with the freshman biology team. And when I say just this semester, we operate on a 4x4 block schedule in my district. So a traditional year-long class is just 18 weeks. And in January, we will be switching and I will move to the chemistry team because biology will be over. So when I say team, our district moved away from co-teaching a few years ago, and now we use a model called co-servicing. And in a co-service model, I work with a team of biology teachers or regular education teachers teaching and learning specialist, and then sometimes the speech pathologist or the ELL teacher in the building. And we plan instruction for multiple sections of a certain class all together, and we look at all the learners in the classroom. So I have been at Brookfield Central for 21 years. I feel like I'm an anomaly in education these days. I haven't bounced around, but it's really allowed me to get into a lot of different classrooms and really see what's going on in the math classes and in the science. That's where I spend most of my time, and dive in and help all the learners and not just the ones with special ed needs. So today, the process that we're going to introduce you to, I want you, even though my stories are primarily going to come from a special ed lens, I want you to know that this process is useful for all students. And I have done it in some of the regular ed classes that I've supported throughout the years.
Okay, thank you so much, Annalee. So we just want to go ahead. The workshop site, Annalee is going to explain what's there.
Yeah, so we have a bit.ly available for you here, and I did put it in the chat box, and in a moment I'll post it again, but there are workshop activities and templates that we're going to refer to today, and there are some examples of the documents as well. During the session, the activities and the responses are going to be done through the chat rather than doing breakout rooms. We're going to try doing everything through the chat today. If you have any questions, please put it. You can put it in the chat. You can put it in the question and answers. We'll try to manage both of them. But we have pauses in our presentation to address questions along the way. So don't feel like you have to save everything for the end.
Thank you. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to take a look at personalized learning because that always seems to be a real question about what that is. When I talk about personalized learning from the point of view of the UDL lens of access, engage, and express, we're going to really look at the three-step empower the learner process that really ends up kids who become now agents and self-advocates of their own learning. We're going to help you create a learner profile of a learner that you know, and help you build a personal learning backpack based on a strength or a challenge they may have. And then we're also going to discuss how you actually create a goal for a personal learning plan using this particular process. So quite a while ago, I've been probably researching and studying and reading about personalized learning, and I've co-authored 2 books on this, but this actually came up just a couple years ago when there was so much discussion around personalized learning and exactly what it means. I just want to point out this. Personalized learning is not what is done to the learner, and it's not about tailoring the learning. It's about really helping each learner to identify and develop these skills they need to support and enhance their own learning so that agency and self-advocacy can be realized. We need for kids to do things for themselves, and we want kids to be able to develop a learner profile to help pinpoint the types of skills that they're going to need to support and enhance their own learning. And so I'm not a believer of adaptive learning systems, but I do believe we need to empower the kids, okay, so that they can develop agency and be able to advocate for their own learning. So why personalized learning using the UDL lens? Well, here's actually 3 great reasons, by the way. First of all, everyone uses it. It's about equity. Everyone uses the same lens. It's about every kid developing agency in their learning. And it's also to help them to develop self-advocacy skills so they can advocate for themselves for a lifetime. Because whether we know this or not, one of the most important skills we can give kids is self-advocacy skills, because they need to walk out the schoolhouse door one day and advocate for the way that they learn. Okay, so.
This year, we've heard a lot about equity in many different contexts. Today, we want to think about educational equity and how to help our learners realize how they learn most effectively, how to self-advocate for their needs in the classroom, and how to set goals related to skills that they want to improve. I love this definition of educational equity from the National Equity Project. Each child receives what he or she needs to develop his or her full academic and social potential. This is where your understanding of UDL and the learning sciences can be so powerful. That's what we're going to share with you today. So understanding UDL principles is a very teacher thing to know. It doesn't really fall on the shoulders of our learners. What does fall on the learner is knowing what's best for them in a classroom and being able to choose it or advocate for it. We call that agency. This is really the power to act. So we've shared our why and where our passions lie with you. But before we dive in, we'd like you to think about what your goal or purpose for being here today is, and just jot it down on a sheet of paper.
Okay.
So today we are going to take you through the three-step Empower the Learner process and provide examples of how I use it in my everyday practice. You're going to have the opportunity to create a learner profile of a learner that you know using the UDL lens of access, engage, and express. We're going to build a personal learning backpack with tools and apps, and then finally discuss a personal learning plan for your learner.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh, I'm getting messages on my screen about my Mac, so there we are. So I'd like to introduce you to the UDL lens of access, engage, and express, and point this out. I created the UDL lens of access, engage, and express to represent the three principles of universal design for learning. It is the common language that we can use in the classroom when discussing learning with learners. So it could be used in daily practice between the teacher and the learner. It could also be used between the learner and the parent at home. So let me point this out. For those, if you actually want to find out more about UDL, you can actually go to CAS.org, who actually, David Rose created that over 25 years ago. But let me point out the common language of access, engage, and express and what those mean. First, multiple means of representation represents access to the learner. And multiple means of engagement means multiple means of engagement for the learner. And I'll explain that a little bit more in the next slide. And multiple means of expression and action represents express to the learner. But what is important to understand is that these three terms become a part of the common language that can be used in daily conversations about learning. Right now, we don't have that. And this actually helps learners really understand both their strengths and challenges and preferences and needs around these three terms. And these are used over and above learning styles in multiple intelligence because there is so much disparagement around using multiple intelligences and learning styles. But UDL is really based on the neuroscience and how we learn. And that's why this is such an important approach and process to implement with learners, by the way, of any age. But if you actually want to learn more about this particular process in a publication, it's actually in chapter 4 of How to Personalize Learning. So a good part of this presentation really is derived from that book. So I'll dive a little bit deeper about what access means, all these three terms. So each learner, by the way, has preferences and needs and strengths and challenges and how they access, engage, and express. So access is about how a learner first processes information into usable knowledge by accessing content through digital media, visual media, maybe through printed text, sometimes through audio means, or even through touch. Engage is about how a learner engages with the content through multiple strategies and tools to keep their interest and to think deeper about the content by designing, by problem solving, by collaborating through interactives, or through graphics. In the end, it's about engagement that provides the motivation to learn. Okay, and express is about how learners demonstrate what they know and understand about concepts, content, or ideas. And learners can express what they know and understand through writing, presenting, storytelling, drawing, building, making, or creating a movie with multimedia. Express is about making sense of learning. Okay. So the three-step Empower the Learner process can help each learner to share who they are, how they learn, and what they aspire to be in the learner profile. Equity is achieved as every learner uses the UDL lens around their learning. And when a learner can identify their strengths, challenges, preferences, and needs, a conversation can now take place on how they would like to support a challenge or enhance a strength so that a personal learning backpack can be built. There, they can learn the skills, the tools and apps to support their learning. In the end, they can set goals in a personal learning plan to develop agency in their learning so they can self-advocate for a lifetime.
Okay. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to one of my learners, Nathan. Nathan is currently a junior, and he receives special education services due to an ADHD diagnosis, dysgraphia, and he receives speech services for stutter. Additionally, he has a seizure disorder and executive functioning deficits that really impact his written language skills. Nathan and I first created his learner profile the summer he was preparing to enter high school. It was part of the extended school year transition plan that we have for a number of our learners. But it wasn't a one-time deal. We continue to go back to it at the beginning of every school year, and then I try to hit it 2 or 3 more times throughout the year. So this document, it does not just stay housed with Nathan and myself. It is something that he shares with his teachers at the beginning of a new class. And like I said, we're on a block schedule. So some classes are actually we start term 2 next week. So a number of students, especially the upperclassmen, are going to get all new teachers next week. So this last week, we took a look at his learner profile and said, all right, is there anything that we need to update? Is there anything that you want to expand on or change? Because he will be sharing it out with his new teachers at the end of this week. So how we use this in the classroom. There are many teachers in the building who provide a lot of choice opportunities for students when it comes to assessment or how they want to practice a new skill. Nathan is able to look at those choices in the classroom and make good choices based on his strengths, especially if it's something he's going to be doing independently. He's going to choose activities and assessment options that play to his strengths. He also has the opportunity to work on his challenges. When advocating for his needs, this also helps him not just tell teachers about his challenges, but what his strengths are and what will help him in the classroom. I think that this is important for all of our learners to be able to articulate this, especially in special education, because we spend a lot of time talking about what they're not good at, when in reality, everyone is good at something, and we want them to also be able to talk about their strengths, not just their challenges. So I have found over the years that learners who have expressive language challenges really struggle to come up with descriptors and may benefit from checklists or sentence starters when they are creating their learner profile. Often students don't have the metacognitive skills to really think about their thinking without the prompts. In chapter 4 of How to Personalize Learning, you'll find examples of checklists to help with those learners. For the younger learner, you may want to personalize this checklist even further with language that they're familiar with, or even specific examples from your classroom that they can identify with. Also in chapter 4 of how to personalize learning, you'll find access to all the templates we are going to be referencing today. The templates are also in your participants folder, which I've shared the link in the chat box, and I see Kathleen just shared it also. So if anybody has any problems with that, let us know, but it is there for your use.
Okay. So here we are.
Yeah, so if you have brought up this template, or if you're in a position where you were able to quickly print it, that's great. Otherwise, you can look at the participants folder, or you know what, you could even just make a grid on a sheet of paper right now. But why don't you take a moment and think of a learner that you know, maybe it's your child or a learner that you currently have or you had in the past, or you know what, maybe it's even you. We're all lifelong learners, right? And pick one area to reflect about strengths, challenges, needs, and preferences. So when we say one area, we're looking at the access, engage, or express. We're going to take a few minutes to do that.
Thank you, Whitney, for putting that back up. And you don't have to write a lot of strengths, challenges, preferences, and needs if you just were to do one that sort of stands out with you about a learner that you know. So we'd like to give this maybe, we're going to give this probably a couple of minutes for you to sort of include that in there. And if you have any questions, just put those in the chat and we can respond to those.
If it would be helpful to put the example back up, we could do that too.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. In fact, when we actually see these with Nathan's profile here, there's a lot of here that you see that's definitely common strengths and challenges that a learner like he would have. I kind of would like to point out, if you notice that that the learner actually puts the word I, and that's the first step in really this whole ownership to who I am as a learner. And when kids can say, you know, I am or I have, that's the beginning of a conversation that you can have with them. Is that right, Annalie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. How are we doing, everyone? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Still need more time? Are you okay? Do a thumbs up if you're ready to.
So I was reading the chat, and Michelle just posted that in her school or her program, they phrase challenges as helps, as in I need help when, or I need help with. And that she finds that puts them in a good or a better growth mindset. I think that's an amazing idea, and I think I might take that.
Yeah, I love that. Again, that's the beginning of these great conversations that you can have with your learners, you know, and this is really the beginning, you know, of them sort of being in charge of who they are, you know, and that they're sharing things that a lot of times that they find difficult to share. So it definitely is an indicator and a good way for them to develop a growth mindset. Mm-hmm. I really like that. So
I also like putting the I in front of it, because I find that the students own the things that they're good at. So often, especially at high school, they have an attitude that they can't do, that they can't be successful. And I want them to own their successes, and I want them to own the things that they're good at. So putting that I in front, I think, is important.
Yeah. Um, so now we're going to see if you'd like to be able to share out the profile that you have and share out what you learned about this learner that you did not see before. Because when you're thinking about them from the point of strengths and challenges and preferences and needs, it's a good idea to think about, what is it that I didn't see before? We kind of miss out those sometimes little pieces that we didn't understand about them before. But when you're seeing kids through this particular lens, you see actually a learner that you probably didn't know before. So please share out what you discovered about this learner. Come on, don't be shy. Let's see. No, I don't see anybody sharing yet. That's fine if you only have one row down. If you only have either access, engage, or express, something that sort of just really comes to mind pretty quickly, would love for you to share that. Okay. So Ashley, thanks for sharing this. In general, students know more about their learning tendencies than our current system and structures give them credit for. Absolutely. Yes, and the thing is, and I'm glad that you pointed this out, that you look at their strengths. And the other piece on that learner profile, by the way, is who they are, what their strength, what their talents are, what their interests are, what their passions are, what they aspire to be. Those are those other parts of the learner profile that we didn't dive deep into, but those are extremely important for kids to tell their story, because all kids, have a set of hopes and dreams really as they grow up. And in fact, I discovered that kids actually have hopes and dreams pretty early on in their life, and those are good things to find out about kids. So finding about their aspirations and having them talk about that, and Nathan sharing that he wanted to be a programmer, and that's what he wants to do. And wow, our job is to get him there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and the whole idea is that kids really, by the way, rarely share out who they are as learners, because they have no way or no common language to do that. And so I'm just going to emphasize this process really introduces a common language for kids. Yes, and definitely helps with communicating with kids, for sure. And the thing is that uh, whether any kid knows this or not, because they're always comparing themselves with each other in the classroom with other kids, they all need to know that we all have strengths and challenges in our learning, and there's no one that seems to be has one advantage over the other, and we need to recognize the strengths for sure. Um, the process helps students share how they see themselves. I'm glad you pointed this out, Laurie, because one of the important things is that self-perception and how kids perceive themselves. And if we can get kids to develop a positive self-image early on, no matter how many struggles that they may have around learning, this is a really good point. And Brandon says, Nathan seems like his interests have really derived from his strengths and challenges, and I hope everyone helps him also see that some of his challenge will come up with his career interests. That may be the motivation he needs to tackle them. Um, so yeah, so it is about the conversation. I always say that we need to really value the power of story that every child has, because they do have stories to share with you. We just need to give them opportunities, and the learner profile is a great way to start a conversation and to really to realize who they are, um, and um, and basically recognize and value those conversations. It says, I spent a lot of time advising schools with these personalized learning plans. I love how this was laid out and feel this makes the steps easier. It does. And Annalie has more experience than anyone I know in doing this. There's lots of people, by the way, that use this learner profile in this whole process that was introduced back in actually 2014 in the first publication. But I'm so glad that you're able to share all of this. So due to time, I'm going to move on because we have some more sharing, but here's one point here is how can we help each learner develop agency? Well, when you use the UDL lens, have the learner decide if they'd like to support a challenge or enhance a strength. Actually, let that be their decision, okay? So they can develop more independent, self-directed learning skills and again, achieve agency in the end. All right. So
this is Nathan again, and what he's done is he's picked a challenge and a preference from each of his three categories, access, engage, and express, right from his learner profile. He then identified tools or strategies that help him in areas that he still needs to grow in as he becomes an independent learner. So this is where students really start owning some of their challenges and saying, okay, what do I need to do to improve on this? And I hope that kind of answers one of the questions that I saw, Brandon, from the chat, about does somebody help him notice his challenges? And that is something that we do. I'm going to actually talk more about that when I discuss the IEP process. But this is kind of step 2 here. The backpack does help students identify what they need to work on in their challenges and how to improve them.
Okay. So here's just a little bit more about the personal learning backpack. And here's just a few examples of the types of tools and apps that can support to enhance access, engage, and express, but most important is for the learners to have the conversation on how he or she may want to support a challenge or enhance a strength in their learning. And again, there's actually a very nice resource that actually spells that out when kids have certain strengths and challenges in very specific areas, what types of tools will really be helpful for them. So take a look at that, and that may be really helpful for you as you're sort of trying out this process. So again, in your participants folder, here's the first file around strengths. You notice here that actually it looks at if access, engage, and express. If a learner's strength is listening and comprehending, then a tool or resource that could actually be really helpful for them to sort of enhance that strength. And it's great to be able to talk in that terms about enhancing a strength, because that may be their choice. They may want to enhance a strength versus to support a challenge. But again, those are their particular choices. And this is just one example that you'll find in your resource in the participants folder for this session. And I keep on hitting the wrong, but anyway, here is the actually piece around challenges. And so, and this is a resource around, and the one that you're seeing here is around express. And if the learner's challenge is spelling and grammar, here are some types of tools or resources, the types of skills that learner would need, because it's not just about the tools, it's really the skills, and the skills are a part of that backpack. And then there's a complementary resource to learn about that particular tool. So that has been left you in, again, in the participants folder. It's a longer document, but it's there for sure.
So here's the template for a personal learning backpack. And if you want your own copy, again, they are listed in the participants folder. But right now we'd like you to look at the learner profile, just the one line that you created, or the one row that you created for your learner, and pick one area, pick the one area that you did before, and list one strength or challenge that you have listed now in the learning backpack, and then think about what resources might be available to address that need. And there isn't really time to dive through everything that we have listed in the participants folder, but maybe you're aware of some apps or tools or strategies that that you already know that you could list.
Okay, so I'm going to just go back to Nathan's just so that people can take a look at that particular example, right? So I'll just go back a few slides. How's that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that helpful for everyone? And of course, we're going to actually ask you to actually share that out in the following slides. So we hope that you can at least pick one area. And again, this is a conversation that you have with the learner where the learner is really leading the conversation. And so this particular one was probably developed, we can ask Anjali, over a little bit of time, right?
Oh yeah, this is 3 years in the making here.
So,
And I always tell families and students or my learners that you're never really done. This is a living, breathing document that we go back and we update constantly.
Yeah, it's a PDF file, Sarah. So if you go in there, you can find that. It should be in there. I just checked on that actually this morning. So it's a PDF file. Oh, it was there and now it's not. Oh, somebody. Oh, so you know what? You have a link to that site. I'll make sure to upload that. I can't really do that right now, but maybe somebody actually decided they I don't know how they deleted that, but I'll definitely make sure it's up there. Oh, you watched it watched it disappear. Okay, not our doing, but I'm sorry about that. But think of like Anjali says, think about something that you actually have access to. That would actually be a really good tool to put in a backpack, and think about the skills that somebody would need. So I love how Nathan says, I need to learn how to use a live scribe pen. And now that's a very special tool. And that does take very specific skills on how to use that pen. So,
Live scribe pens are not for everybody. This is kind of a fun part of the presentation because I've learned some skills or apps that were new to me from the chat box. So if there's something that you want to share out, we could probably start putting stuff in the chat box.
So let me just promise you that I will upload that file to the website as soon as we're finished with the session, so you can have access to that. And I'm sorry, it just disappeared. So not too sure how that happened, but anyway, do any of you want to share any types of tools or apps that you think would be really helpful for maybe the learner that you're thinking about? That has been on your mind? Oh, okay. Okay, thanks, Sarah. So I was trusting that people had, well, the reason I did the editing rights is because the Word documents, I wanted them to be able to have editing rights, and I probably should have, right. I won't make that mistake again, for sure. So anyone like to share some of the tools that they're thinking of? I think of a few tools, and one tool that comes to mind is Book Creator. Is a great tool around for kids to be able to express ideas, concepts, and in a way that is sometimes a lot more powerful than just speaking about them. But okay, and they use Canva. I'm always looking for anything to help with it. Oh, well, I have a, okay, Anjali, I actually have a pretty extensive list on executive function tools and apps.
Oh, I know. I just,
Okay.
I like seeing what else is out there. I always get something I hadn't heard of before.
Okay. Okay. EdTech tools for anything. So what types of tools, Sarah, do you use around Access, Engage, and Express to support either support a challenge or enhance a strength? So that's what we'd love for anyone to share out. And we only have like maybe um, probably just actually we have very little time to do that, but let's see if we can do that at all. Well, I'm going to go on because the thing is that one of the important things is that we want to actually finish our presentation before the session is over, because we know that you have other sessions that you want to go to. So Sarah says Padlet, Flipgrid, Nearpod, Peer Deck, Buncee, and Screencast. Yes, absolutely all of those for sure. And then it's again all the skills that you need to have around those very specific tools. So how can we actually help kids develop agency? Well, we want to empower each learner with tools, apps, and resources, along with the skills and strategies that they need to either support a challenge or enhance a strength, so they can become self-directed learners who can now advocate for their learning. But actually, the whole idea of developing skills is a great experience, and how kids can actually take things that maybe find challenging in a way to support that. We want them to have that I can do attitude in the end. And that's the whole reason in having them empowered with this knowledge, and also with a backpack that can actually help them do that. All right.
So I'm often asked how I integrate the learner profile into my learner-led IEP meetings. When I hold an IEP meeting, parents are provided a draft prior to the meeting. I shoot for 1 week beforehand, for sure 3 days beforehand. And I try to address as many questions and concerns before the actual meeting that I can. I mean, there are always things that I can address that I really don't need the full IEP team to be present for. So I try to take care of all that kind of stuff on the front end. And then the day of the meeting, the student begins presenting a slide deck that they've created and shares with the team their hopes, their dreams, their post-secondary goals, and all of that, leads into discussing their post-secondary transition plan. At this point, we have not even opened up the formal IEP document. I focus strictly on those hopes and dreams and what do they want to do after high school. So that conversation then goes right into the learner profile, where my learner will provide each member a hard copy, or this year we are putting everything up online we're doing screen shares because we are not holding any in-person IEP meetings. But the student provides copies and they discuss their strengths and their challenges as it relates to the UDL lens. Sometimes, if I'm lucky, I have a learner who wants to highlight some assignment that they recently did that really demonstrates that they had access to all the materials that they needed to be successful, or the tools that they demonstrated. How were they engaged at mastering this particular standard? And then how did they express that information back to their teacher? So it really becomes a powerful show and tell for the student during that meeting. And this is the bulk of my IEP meetings. We spend more time on that learner profile than any other part of the IEP. Because once we're done with that discussion around the learner profile, I'm able to easily link current academic and functional performance to their areas of weakness. Because unfortunately, that IEPs really focus on what are they not good at. So I like to front load my meetings with all those positives, just to make sure we have a real positive tone in the room. And students are more apt to share when they're feeling good and they're feeling positive about themselves and confident in what they're doing. And then when we get to supplementary aids and services, many of those have already been discussed through those needs and preferences in the learner profile. And I find that my meetings really go pretty smoothly. They're very, I've gotten feedback that they're engaging, because then when we finally get to those goals, the groundwork has been set on what does the student actually need? Why do they need it? And what is it going to do for them in the end? You know, how does it relate back to those post-secondary plans to support our learners and make sure that they are prepared for life after high school? Ultimately, I want my meetings to tell a story about the student, and I want the student to own that story and be able to discuss all parts of their story, the parts that are good, the parts that they can be proud of, and the parts that they have to own because they need to work on something. So this has gained some traction in my district. In my building, there's 7 special ed teachers, and we have all moved to students running their own IEP meetings, and more and more people are starting to really use that learner profile as the center for their meetings to kind of plan around that.
Well, I think this is definitely the secret sauce to the IEP meetings. And I want to say that how powerful it is and what a powerful idea for kids to be able to lead their own IEP meetings in the end. And if nothing else, this is the absolute value to empower them to be advocates of their own learning.
And I would like to add, we talk about options on how do they feel comfortable expressing. I could see a student not feeling real comfortable giving a presentation through a slide deck. I have had students in the past create videos kind of describing who they are as a learner. And, that goes back to that UDL lens on how do they feel most comfortable? How are they going to do the best job that they can in that setting?
Right. Thank you so much, Anjali,
Mhm.
for sharing. So this is a process, by the way, and this is the last element of the process, personal learning plan. And for teachers, consider having them set access, engage, or express learning goals around a strength or challenge, and then develop action steps around that and a timeline, okay, with intervals where they can actually monitor their own progress. I know that some kids have a hard time doing that particular piece, but that's an important skill going forward. And again, we want kids to actually to be able to reflect on their achievements and actually share out how they will put this all into their daily practice. We don't think of learners as having a practice, but they do. And that's what we want them to have in the end. So this is actually an example of a personal learning plan that has an access learning goal. And the learner has identified that a text-to-speech tool and apps will support his learning in this particular challenge. And he's outlined what he needs to do to accomplish this particular goal and what it looks like when he's met his goal. And by identifying what it looks like when he's reached a goal, and he's reflecting, of course, in the end. And this is actually just a brief little snapshot. In chapter 4, I actually set up a PLP for all the different types of goals that a learner could have. Learning goals of access, engage, and express. And of course, there actually are other types of goals, including personal goals, college and career goals, and citizenship goals. And but the whole process is the same of goal setting, action planning, progress monitoring, and reflection. And this is really every kid needs to have a plan. A plan without a set of actions, by the way, is, of course, is only a dream. So we want kids really to be able to achieve their goals and get a real sense of achievement around their goals. Okay. So think of a goal, of a learner that you have. And so what goal would your learner set for their personal learning plan? And advocate when they're leading a learner-led conference or an IEP meeting. And this is actually Anjali can actually reflect on some of this now. That it's not just for IEP meetings,
Oh,
for sure.
Yeah, I would like everybody to really think about how this process and having students have goals and how do you reach goals. This is not a special ed thing. This is good practice for any school to adopt. So we don't want you to think that this is just a special ed type strategy for self-advocacy. This is really meant for all students. You know, and I'm looking at the time right now. This would probably also be a good time to start putting questions in the chat box if you have any.
Or any type of reflection. Thank you, Laurie. So the quote that I was trying to remember about a goal and a plan is a goal without a plan is only a dream. And I think that that's a really good thought when you're approaching all of this. So, yes. Yeah, it's a great way, again, for connecting with students to take the time for to share really each part of their story. You know, the learner profile has three aspects: who I am, how I learn, and what I aspire to be. Every one of those is a story. Okay. And I think that allowing kids to share their particular story in any way that they want, but it just actually builds some wonderful relationships around who they are. And it basically tells kids how much you value them, that you really like to know about this aspect of themselves. And I will tell you that kids, you know, most kids just really love to share all this stuff out, but they never really get opportunities to. But this is a great segue. Michelle says it would be cool and empowering for the student to show progress on a goal during the show and tell part of their learner profile at the start of the meeting. And the evidence is right there. That's an absolutely fabulous idea. So, so again, sessions being recorded. Also, in these times with less in-person time, agency is so important. Articulating who they are transfers to being able to share their thinking on academic goals. Absolutely. And the thing is that if everyone does it, if everyone uses this, there's such equity in the classroom, and creating a culture where we trust and respect and value each other really can be the result to all of them. Anyway, here's some final thoughts around learner and having the actually access to the remote. So again, put the kid in charge, give them the remote to identify strengths, challenges, preferences, and needs. Have a discussion with them to decide on the tools and skills they want to support their own learning. Actually, to set goals in a personal learning plan, and of course, to advocate in the way they learn, and again, to achieve learner agency. That is, by the way, the prize in education is agency. So here's just some final thoughts. And I came up with this a couple of years ago when I was thinking about this. We actually have to move, change the conversation from telling kids, you need to do this, you need to learn this tool, to self-advocacy, because the only way we're going to give them ownership to learning is when they can actually use the word I. And like you were saying, I need help with, I'd like to learn, I'd like to know how to. Any of those is really so empowering for kids, and it is about empowering the learner here.
Well, finally, I'd like you to look back at the learner profile that you created, the backpack, and the goal if you wrote one out, and ask yourself if your goal was met for today. I hope that you got some good takeaways that will help you create learner-centered classrooms, promote this in your district where every learner can develop agency in their learning. and that they're valued and that they can grow academically and socially and emotionally. If you have any other questions, we still have a few minutes. You can throw them in the chat box. You can reach out to either one of us through email or on Twitter. But I'm glad that you were able to join us today.
So we want you really to just take a moment to reflect on the goal that you wrote down at the very beginning, and so that you can actually think about what you learned through this process in the past hour, and to share that out actually in the chat. So people are asking what our Twitter handles are. I think the best way to do that actually is to type them in now, because those are at the very first. We didn't actually put them in at, that's mine. So, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I need to get to everyone. All right. Okay. All right. There you go. Oh yes, there they are. There's our Twitter handles down here. We actually want to thank everyone for really attending our particular session, and want to note that if you have any questions in the session and they didn't get answered, you can be happy to send us an email, and we'd be happy to respond. So we want to actually have you go out and empower your learners this year, and no matter what environment that you happen to be in. Okay, so the last slide here is, really would love for you to actually, to participate in that 1-minute poll. And Whitney has actually shared the link to that poll, and I would love for you to get would love to get some feedback from that. And she's also sharing the link to the symposium agenda. And I believe today is the last day of the sessions. But this has been a great 3-day virtual experience, and so thankful Aurora decided to offer that to everyone. And I want to thank my co-presenter, Anjali, because she is a total marvel, and I value her and the way that she's really empowered her kids, and she is a role model, of course, for the teachers in her school. And so thank you, Anjali.
Well, thank you for always, thank you for including me today. I always appreciate it.
Yeah. So, by the way, we don't have a slide deck up, but actually there's a copy of this particular session. There was a recording of the session, so you can actually see all of the slides there. We hope you enjoyed it, and there's lots of great resources, by the way, on the bit.ly. Thank you, Whitney, for putting that out again.
And we'll get that participants folder fixed.
Yeah, I'm going to go do that right now. So thank you, Whitney, for supporting us during this presentation. And everyone, thank you for coming today, and all your great responses and remarks and thoughts and reflections. We really love the idea that you've been here, and maybe we are going to empower every child on the planet so they can realize their hopes and dreams in the end. And I know that you're all have joined here, and probably have gained a whole wealth of knowledge over the last 3 days in these virtual sessions. So thank you so much, and look for the recording. I'm sure that will be available fairly soon to everyone. And then share that actually with your peers and your colleagues in your schools, and so that you can spread the wealth and spread great ideas.